Thursdays. I have to put my arm around my beloved because then you can see us both better. So we're talking about today about death, dealing with death. How do we deal with death? And often I'm informed by my clients usually about what I want to talk about on these videos. And today I was talking with a client who had a sudden death of someone in the family, and so that's why it's close to my heart right now. So I have some readings I want to share from my book and from my memorial service. So if anyone out there is dealing with death, and by the way, happy Father's Day. And that's another connection for me when I thought about this subject is my father died when I was 7 years old, and so Father's Day is a day of death for me in a way, celebrating my father's life. So the short amount I got to experience it. So, but I always like to check in with my beloved. So, what?
Just a minute, I'll be back.
She'll be back.
I thought I was
okay?
gonna sneeze.
Oh, I thought you were snorting coke or something.
No, I don't do that.
So, not in your medicine cabinet, huh?
No.
So, what are your thoughts on dealing with death?
Dealing with death.
You've experienced the death of people close,
Several people.
family members.
Well, the first time that I ever experienced a shocking death was when my parents were driving back from Las Vegas. My dad was driving. And my grandmother, my mom's mom, and an aunt were with them. And now this was a long time ago, years and years and years ago.
Before we were together, but before we were together as a couple, but I knew you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I remember that happening, yeah.
Well,
we were friends.
They didn't like putting their seatbelt on because they grew up in Latin America and that wasn't required. And it wasn't required here for a long time until it was, right? And so Dad says that something got in his way. He lost control of the car, crashed, and both my grandmother and my aunt died almost instantly in that crash. And it was a total shock for everybody. Not only did we lose a grandmother, my mom lost her mom, but my aunt and all her kids now had no mother. Mm-hmm. And that was really huge. Yeah. It was mourning, it was traumatic, and it's always in the back of my head, those kids grew up without a mother.
You know what you're reminding me of, having participated in ceremonies after,
Yes.
people in your family have died. The custom is, and you can say it better, but, that you do the rosary, everyone
Yes.
gets together and
Yes.
they light candles and do the rosary, and for how many nights?
I think it's 7 nights.
7 nights in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And then a year from then they do it
They do another
one night, right?
Yes,
It's
celebration.
really kind of beautiful that much time and energy goes into that.
And then every
process.
Mother's Day, every birthday, every Christmas, Mom always likes to go and put flowers in her mom's grave. Mm-hmm. And she always talks about her. She wasn't a great mom to my mom, but she learned how to love her regardless. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, no, there's a lot of ceremony involved in death for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, in Guatemala, the body is not taken away right away. It's kept in the house, mm-hmm. and everybody comes and visits and comforts and brings food, and the whole community gathers around that person, and they talk about what that person was like. It's just it's like a celebration, really. Mm-hmm. And shouldn't it be a celebration too, right?
And we have that obviously in American culture, but not to that degree.
Yes.
Right? I mean, we do a memorial or a funeral, and you celebrate one's life. there's always tears. It's so important for that grieving process. And to have the support of family and
Yes.
friends around you. I think that's probably, obviously there's the spiritual component there, but the most important part in my mind is the coming together of people to console each other, to celebrate the life, to talk about not only the sadness, but also to share the stories about how this person's life affected one.
Yes, 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 yes.
And
The last one that you did, celebration of life, was for our friend Leslie, and that's an interesting story because Leslie was part of our clan. She went to Catalina Island with us. She was part of my women's group, and a week before she passed, I had this intuition, in a dream, to have I have two women that had cancer, working with cancer, and I wanted to give them each their own sound bath, to bring them together, not together but separately, and lay them down and do some sound for them, and that is the last time that I saw her. That's the memory that I have of her, laying there enjoying the sounds of the bowls and the gongs and the this and all the instrument that I gave her, and then all of a sudden she was gone. It's like one minute we're here and in the next minute we're gone.
That's
It's just amazing to me.
It's a perfect segue into what I wanted to read here.
Okay.
From thy book, The Magic of the Soul. And we knew she was not well, right? And so it was a surprise, probably not a shock.
Right.
It's always a shock, but it was understandable. My client this morning, the family member that passed away, it was completely sudden, had no idea. It was a car accident like you were talking about. And so even more so, it's like that experience of how can someone be here one day and not the next, right?
Right, it's just
The
amazing.
contrast.
Shocking. Yes.
The world's a different place now, right?
Yes.
So here's what I write about in The Magic of the Soul. I have a section called, this is in the chapter, Magic in the Dark, and it's called, Why Does Death Seem So Unreal? Most people who experience the loss of a loved ones are perplexed by the seeming impossibility that they could be here one moment, sharing experience, fully present, and the next moment, or day, or week, or month, they are no longer around. It is the seeming impossibility of the phenomenon of death that indicates the reality of its illusion. The reality of its illusion. Death seems impossible because it is. Nothing ever dies, it only changes form. When someone passes, our senses experience death, but if we are in tune with the truth, we'll experience the continuance of life in new form. I'm going to read something also from my memorial service that I read for Leslie. This is a quote from Gibran, which is also Khalil Gibran, which is also in the book, but this is a longer version. The poet Prophet, from the Prophet by Khalil Gibran. You would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of life. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond, and like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing, but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you've reached the mountain top, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. I wanted to read also a poem by Mary Elizabeth Fry. And in my service, I always encourage people, look, crying and expressing emotion is it's imperative for the healing process. Even though this poem says, do not cry, but it makes an important point. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I'm 1,000 winds that blow. I'm the diamond glints on snow. I'm the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. And so again, I'm going to keep reading from my book. This is just a reading session here. No, we're not done yet, babe.
No, but you don't need to read anymore.
I'm going to read this.
Talk about you and losing your father at such
Let me just read this last.
early age.
I'm going to read this last part first because I have planned this.
All right.
This doesn't mean we shouldn't grieve the loss and sensory experience with someone we love who graduates into another level of existence. As souls with human bodies, we are both human and divine, and it is just as important to honor our humanness as it is to honor the truth of our divine nature. Give yourself permission to cry and scream and mourn as much and as long as you need, but also recognize the truth that you can never lose anyone. In fact, when the barrier of physical reality is dissolved, the opportunity for spiritual communion is even greater. While fully grieving the loss of the sensory relationship, seek to enhance your ongoing spiritual relationship and continue to embrace and be in awe of the magic that exists in all experience. So your question about my father. I was 7 years old, and so, for me, it was interesting because I think I was a spiritual kid, not religious. I didn't, in fact, I didn't buy into what I was taught in Christianity at the age of, well, it was later than that. When I was in 5th grade, I renounced Catholicism because I didn't believe the stories they were telling me. Later on, I realized there must be a higher power, but it's not the God in the clouds that I was taught about. But I diverged. But I really believed what people told me. Your father's in a better place. I really believed that. On the other hand, there was loss, and I remember lying in my bed crying one night. My mom came in and she said, what are you crying about? And I said, I killed my father.
Oh, you thought you killed your dad?
Children, we believe everything revolves around us, right? We haven't disidentified from that. And so my cousins and I were at Christmas Eve. He died on Christmas Eve, and it was on Christmas Eve that we had a family gathering, and we were talking about what would happen if my father died. And we were all saying, like, oh, I would, kill myself. I don't remember the exact words, but I remember thinking, oh, that's why he died, because we were talking about that. So, and my mom obviously consoled me and said, it wasn't your fault. But I wrote a letter to my father many, many years later because, I had a lot of issues with my father, didn't feel accepted by him. But, this is an example of continuing the relationship. So when I was, at the height of my chronic illness that I talk about in my book, I wrote a letter to him saying that how hard it was for me to learn how to be a man, because I never had a model. Right. Never had a stepfather or anyone really to model that for me. So I had to learn on my own how to be a man. And it was a tremendous healing. I mean, a lot of people have told me that's one of the most poignant parts of the book is that letter to my father. I won't read that for you.
By the book.
But I will read one more thing about the closing in my memorial service. And this, I think, brings it all together. If the passing of a loved one is the most difficult to bear, it also can be the reminder and inspiration to live our lives to its fullest. That's exactly what my client said today. She said, I want time to stop so that I can embrace all of my relationships while I have them.
Yes.
So it is that reminder. To right our wrongs, to forgive, to live in joy, to love unconditionally, and to be grateful for the brief time that we have together in this precious life. The author Ram Dass said, in the end, we're all just walking each other home. In the end, we're all just walking each other home. So, let's be good to each other. Be good humans, yes? Be compassionate. You know, I don't know, there's a lot of talk, a lot of people these days around us that are fighting, family members and so on. And
a lot of conflicts.
You know, when the people that you're fighting with are gone, you know, that's another thing my client said today is, you know, I had regrets, you know, that I didn't connect with this person, you know, more often, right? And I said, I've never met anyone who had someone pass that didn't have some kind of regret, right?
Right.
Well, so the more that we connect with people here and now, the fewer regrets we can have, and more importantly than that, the richer our lives will be.
So make time for other people.
Absolutely.
Call, text, try to get together with people.
And there's too much busyness in the world today, in our world, and that was another interesting with my client, is that it brought home all the things that we were coaching about, you know, puts everything in perspective. Nothing is as important as we think it is.
It really isn't.
When we look at life from a higher perspective,
yes.
which death often invites
and
us
it
to
can
do.
go like that.
That's right. You never know.
You never know.
You know, that reminds me, one last thing.
Yeah.
You know, I write about this in the book too, is one time when our kids were young, we were sitting around the table, I said, what would we say to each other if we knew that we were all going to die in the next 15 minutes? And I don't remember the answer, but it was profound, right? So that's a question you can ask with your family and friends, right? And it really brings us down to, as Don Juan said to Carlos Castaneda in the Castaneda books, is use death as your advisor, right? Death is always watching, right?
Always lurking around.
Right. So use death as your advisor. How would I live this day if I knew I were to die tomorrow? We'll leave you to that, and
we didn't need it to be too, down or a downer, but we
part of life.
wanted to celebrate Father's Day, and it reminded you of the death of your dad, and you wanted to bring this up.
Well, you know, and it's not, I don't feel it's a downer. It's, you know, because we can find joy in even the most difficult
Absolutely.
of life's challenges. And so the more we can appreciate life as it is, the more, as Khalil Gibran said, you know, the secret to death is in life, and vice versa.
So leave it.
Yeah. Let's live it, people. All right. So if you got some value out of this, give us a like. Give us some comments. Tell us how you deal with death. And love
And
each
life.
other.
How are you living your perfect life?
And share this, especially if you know anyone who's going through this right now. All right. Our love to you, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
That's not only that.
See you next week.